Welcome back to Sir Ela Philosophy, Episode 7, Part 3. Today we cover Section 4, Reactive Existence, and Section 5, Our Historical Experiential Existence with Physical Existence Ignored. Let's get started. We will be starting now with Section 4, Reactive Existence, Paragraph 38. Our reactive existence is experiential existence minus physical existence, sensory existence, and thought existence, which leaves us our reactive experiences. We have reactive responses result from sensory input. From our early evolution, we have interacted with our environment with engaged evaluative responses without language. Footnote 10. Ideas are the representations experienced from physical existence, arranged and rearranged into many different master ideas. It is important to understand that although reactive existence developed before language and thought existence, in later stages of evolution, thought existence arose with ideas, memory, of experience that in turn led to language. Therefore, pre-language reactive existence can involve thought existence similar to sensory existence. Thought existence is then the recipient of both sensory and reactive existences that transform into ideas. Language is an expression of these ideas. Our human brains have evaluative interpretations to sensory input that moves us to reactive responses. Our reactive response has a singularity to its character. One example of our reactive response is the fight-flight response. We have others such as love, hate, joy, and anger. In the end, our reactive experience to sensory input invokes a color of feeling. Paragraph 39. Our reactive existence has both internal and external sources. We have internal sources to reactive existence, such as our sexual impulses, hunger impulses, and other reactive responses that are due to physical world changes within our brain and our bodies. We have external sources to reactive existence that we derive from our sensory existence. We could involve only one, or a combination, or all 5 of our external source senses. Our external sources play into our senses and involve a non-conscious evaluation of the sensory input, whereas our internal sources to reactive existence can play directly to our mind to provide stimuli. Here we have a chemical interaction that moves us towards our external search for satisfaction. Under this, we could consider our own brain as an additional sensory input. Paragraph 40. Our reactive experiences become ideas in thought existence. When we experience a reactive response, we obtain an idea of it in our thought existence. When we remember the idea of the reactive experience, we pull together a set of sliver ideas to the original experience. When we bring up an idea experience from a reactive experience, we can invoke a reactive response to different experiential degrees. Our reactive responses can and do turn into ideas that can then feed back to have a reactive reaction not only from physical existence, but triggered from thought existence. This means we have again the need to bring accountability to our reactive existence, as it too can be broken from physical existence and result in a reactive response to something that had no reality attached. Paragraph 41. Our output of a reactive response is reactive coloring. When we experience a reactive response in our experiential existence, it is that of feel. Like color, where our brain interprets the wavelength of the light and it in turn colors our world, our reactive feel, by the inputs of the reactive responses. We interpret it and create a color of feel. Paragraph 42. Once we move the reactive experience to an idea, it too can be a master idea with sliver ideas that we can move or remove from any idea. When we have reactive experiences, it contributes to thought existence in the creation of the idea of the reactive experience. We now have an idea that we can manipulate the same as all other ideas. We can evoke the idea of any reactive experience and have it contribute to any experiencing reactive response. It could even trigger a reactive response and experience. This means that we can have ideas from our reactive experiences under reconstruction break away from our physical world and not align with any current experience. They can contribute and add to any reactive coloring to any person. Therefore, we can have manufactured reactive responses and experiences as well. Paragraph 43. Our reactive responses can occur without sensory input if the areas of the brain responsible for the reactive coloring are somehow artificially stimulated. We have other possible ways to evoke reactive coloring. It may be by the introduction of drugs, by a chemical imbalance, or by physical disease. Section 5. Our historical experiential existence with physical existence ignored. Paragraph 44. Our sensory existence is our source that leads us into thought and reactive existence. When we have the input of sensory existence that results in our thought existence and reactive existence, we begin to see the interactions that can contribute to ideas. Our thought existence and reactive existence can and do interact. Each of our three existences require the action of the physical material in our brain during its operation. Our original prime source of thought existence and reactive existence comes from the input of our sensory existence. Whether we obtain it from our vision of seeing the physical world or our experiencing pain in our bodies, all sources of sensory existence feeds into our thought and reactive existences. Paragraph 45. Immanuel Kant separated sensory existence with thought existence and then ignored the relational aspects between the two. Immanuel Kant, in his book Fundamental Principles of the Metaphysics of Morality, stated in his preface, Bibliography 16, page 1, quote, "All rational knowledge is either material or formal." End of quote. First, rational knowledge is simply human knowledge. The position of Kant was that material knowledge, Bibliography 16, page 1, quote, "consider some object," end of quote, where his formal knowledge, quote, "is concerned only with the form of understanding and of the reason itself, without distinction of its objects," end of quote. This does not fit our physical world, as material knowledge is our sensory inputs and our formal knowledge is our mental animations. Kant gave no relational requirement to our physical idea of reality. The obvious difference between this statement of Kant and Sir philosophy is that he viewed his formal as independent of objects. He animated our thought existence as not having any original and relational connection to the physical world. This ignored the accountability aspects of Sir philosophy under our 7 elements to truth. Additionally, with the view held by Kant on material knowledge, he actually placed its knowledge into the physical world rather than within our own thought existence. He had not stated it as such, but the effect of his thinking this idea as true did just that. To understand his mistake, we have to ask where the source to our ideas reside. Paragraph 46, and it's a long one. Our physical existence is our source to ideas. Where do our ideas reside? Our ideas reside in our thought existence, and how they relate to physical existence determines accountability. We can animate ideas in our thought existence to break our physical world connections, But we can trace the source of each original sliver idea to any master idea back to physical existence. The material idea by Kant was our pure thesis ideas, conclusive thesis ideas, and perhaps theorized manufactured ideas of high probability. His formal knowledge heavily involved the theorized manufactured ideas and pure manufactured ideas, which in turn had weakened pure thesis and conclusive thesis ideas. I say this based on his distinction of objects to material objects and his without distinction of objects to reason. This sets up and reinforces the traditional system of rational thought without accountability. We can say this because he animated his ideas without any original source to our ideas, and in doing, he eliminated our accountability system. This was important because later he tried to put the truth of existence and morality into his formal knowledge category. He considered this a priori knowledge. This meant that he viewed ideas as if they were independent to our physical world, and even more than that, not coming from our physical world. Interpretations of Kant vary greatly. Some claim the a priori knowledge of Kant simply meant that we had some ideas constructed physically into our minds, thus existed prior to experience. This implies to some the existence of conscious actions, and they animate the idea that this provides evidence of a conscious and a self-existent being. Some of the problems with philosophers like Kant, Sartre, and others are that they too suffer the wild oscillations in interpretations to the rational thought that religious thought experiences. Paragraph 47. John Locke confused sensory existence with reactive existence. John Locke wrote in his An Essay on Human Understanding, Bibliography 15, Book 3, Chapter 5, page 12, quote, "We find that in their names led our thoughts to the mind and no further. When we speak of justice or gratitude, we frame to ourselves no imagination of anything existing, which we would conceive, but our thoughts terminate in the abstract ideas of those virtues, and look not farther, as they do when we speak of a horse or iron, whose specific ideas we consider not as barely in the mind, but as in things themselves, which afforded the original pattern of those ideas." End of quote. First, in his example, we have his use of sensory existence, reactive existence, and our capacity to evaluate to balance. Footnote 11. Evaluate to balance is a term used in Sir philosophy. It refers to the natural ordering that occurs by the physical structure of the normal and healthy human mind. It is the evolutionary construction to evaluate our physical environment to make our decisions and movements. Evaluate to balance is the core stimulus response mechanism that has been built on since the rise of life. End of footnote. His horse, or iron, has its origination from our physical existence. They are also pure thesis ideas. They have a direct connection to physical existence, and they arrive via our sensory existence. They, by their nature, can come to the visual aspects of our mental life. We derive, quote, gratitude, not from sensory existence as a distinct object, but from an evaluate to balance from experienced sensory existence to our reactive existence. The experience of this can and does become translated into an idea. We can think back to it just like our horse or iron, but instead of coloring a visual representation, we color out a reactive representation. Therefore, when Locke says, quote, "We find to ourselves no imagination of anything existing," end of quote, this is not true. It exists, but not in our visual account. Its existence is in the physical, as we are physical creatures, and gratitude felt is in the evaluation of physical actions that occurred. It, like justice, plays to our sense of balance. The problem is this: the interpretations to the physical actions that occurred we measure in our experiential existence, as gratitude and justice involve evaluation. This means, without Stoic philosophy, we can measure our sense of balance against reality or false reality. Paragraph 48. Another long one. John Paul Sartre treated sensory existence in terms of internal existence only. One of the first presentations of Sartre in his book, Being and Nothingness, was the phenomena of being. He wrote, Bibliography 4, page 7, quote, "Thus there must be for it a phenomena of being, an appearance of being, capable of description as such," end of quote. He provided examples of boredom and nausea. Already we have a shifting away from Stoic philosophy, but in a subtle way. I contend that the phenomena of being by Sartre was sensory existence. Instead of recognizing this and pulling ourselves closer to the physical world, Sartre maintained the philosophical tradition of trying to think of the human mind as a brain without sensory input, and thus ignoring sensory existence. Philosophers have only viewed the human mind in terms of our mental animation capability. They have ignored the physical world input. These examples of boredom and nausea given were attempts to place his view of phenomena of being as an internal source only. He had amputated all external world inputs. However, what was the source of his presented examples of boredom and nausea? Our physical body. Instead of saying of seeing a tree, the physical light bouncing off the tree and into our eyes, he was saying the feeling of boredom from lack of physical stimulation, or the feel of nausea due to physical interactions creating imbalances and disruptions to one's body. His choice to use internal feelings as a source of phenomenon of being is suspicious, as it easily allowed him to not deal with the source of his phenomena of being. Paragraph 49. If we do not maintain our measurement against our physical world, we begin to endanger our species' survival. Our mental animations are the acquired physical experience in sliver idea form, and can lead us into the creation of ideas that do not exist in reality. Our reality is our physical world. Our internal reality is human-created reality. We can and do direct ourselves to manufactured ideas that contribute to manufactured reactive responses and experiences, and to manufactured ideas about our physical world. Unless we maintain our connections to the physical world, we start to separate ourselves from the truth and reality of the world around us. Because we can separate our thought existence from physical reality, we can place ourselves into jeopardy to our long-term survival as a species. We have a long history of thought existence separating from physical reality, and it has demonstrated the suffering we can inflict on one another because of it. This infliction results from unjustified coercion through unaccountable systems of thought. Paragraph 50. Our experiential existence consists of the three existences just outlined. Our sensory, thought, and reactive existences together make up an experiential existence. Our sensory existence feeds into thought and reactive existences. Our thought and reactive existence, in turn, can interact between each other and create different possible animations. They may connect to the physical world, or they may begin to completely break away from our physical world. We can begin to affect our sensory input by the development of our framed reference. We will discuss framed reference in the chapter titled Framed Reference. Before then, we need to distinguish between awareness and consciousness that resides in our experiential existence. This ends Episode 7, Part 3. If you have subscribed, thank you. If you have not, please do. And remember, to lovingly hit that like.